welcome back to 1834 Restoration House. Today we're taking you on the road to Georgia. We're just across the state line from South Carolina at a place called the Travelers Rest State Historic Site. The inn which is standing behind me is the only remaining inn of 4 that were built at the time.
Back in the 1800s, women wore really big dresses, really long dresses, and heels. There's no way they could get up into a carriage, which usually stood up somewhere around here, without steps. So thankfully, all the inns had steps so that women could get in and out of the carriages.
This place is amazing. I'm standing under the porch of the Travelers Rest Inn, and well, we'll come back to this one, so keep watching. Today we have indoor plumbing, and you turn on the faucet, you flush the toilet, you take a shower. Well, in those days they had to drill a hole in the ground and make a well, and that's what this is here. So what they would do is take this cover off of here, and this bucket was on a pulley and a rope, and then you could come along here and you could lower it and raise it. That's how they got their water. Now somebody had to take that water in the house every time they needed it, whether somebody was taking a bath or if they were washing dishes, somebody had to fetch the water. Now, this back here behind me is where they used to keep the milk. And remember the water for just a second. Let's step inside and take a closer look. They would take the fresh milk and put it in tins or jars, and they would put it in this trough right here. So then they would take the cold water and they would pour it in here, and the water would flow over the milk and keep it cold. The problem is, after a while it starts to warm up, so somebody would have to be in here all day long, periodically putting new water into the trough to keep the milk from spoiling.
This is the first wash tub we have seen intact. It's got the chimney here. The wash tub, it's on a bracket across so that you can get the wood underneath, build a fire, get that water hot. These people used it for their family washing clothes, soap making, and other tasks. These people used it for their family washing clothes, soap making, and other tasks.
Now wait a minute. We filmed this before we ever bought this house. That was, what, almost a year ago, two years ago when we filmed this? And we're just now getting around to editing it. That thing there looks awfully familiar. Let's go out back and take a look at our mystery structure. Well, it sure has a similar form, doesn't it? I've long suspected that this had something to do with laundry, particularly since there are water features here, and there was a clothesline that used to be out here before we took it out. And there's an old pole that probably was an older clothesline. But I've got to say, looking at those pictures there from Travelers Rest and comparing it with this thing is probably some kind of a laundry thing. It may have been converted into something else later in its life, but I think it started out as a laundry unit. Sorry to interrupt the video. Let's get back to it. This is a wooden smokehouse, and I want to show you real quick the construction of it. So these are square timbers that were chopped with a broad axe, literally chopped into shape, and they were stacked, but when they did this, they left a gap between them. You don't see any chinking in here. That way the smoke can get out. Otherwise it would just get too smoky. I'd like to show you a couple of artifacts that are inside the smokehouse. This is a blacksmith forge over here, and it was hand cranked, and this was really a small one. You could do little projects with it, but nothing really huge. But by turning the crank there, it would blow air into the coals and make it get hotter. Behind that is a wagon wheel. We have a variety of plows over here, and that's a steering wheel for a paddle wheel boat. This is an interesting piece here. It's a hollowed out log full of salt, and that was used as a bin for processing meat. They would just put put it in there and get it completely salty and then smoke it. The innkeeper had a daughter, and as children do, they grow up and they get married. So the innkeeper's daughter was married to this young man, but he just couldn't stand the hustle and bustle that was going on at the inn. There was just constantly people coming, people going, a lot of boisterous conversation, and he just didn't really like that. So he built himself a cabin right here so he could get away. This was kind of the early version of the man cave.
This is a one-room cabin. Now here's the big fireplace where they did all their cooking and heating things up. So the carriage would not usually be inside the house, obviously. But it's a pretty cool carriage. Looks like a two-person with a little bit of storage underneath back here. Iron wheels. Iron out here and the wood over here. They even have steps. Very nice. Over here we have a loom. And y'all know what that does. We've gone over this one before. So they make their materials here so that they can make clothing. And then you can see the other side of the house. It's not very big. I can't imagine having to live in something so small.
Travelers Rest Historic Site here in Georgia has such a beautiful setting. Can you imagine being a traveler back in the day and coming through this country and stopping to spend the night in a place like this? Just absolutely beautiful. We're here at the end of June and it's not too hot, not too humid, and just absolutely beautiful. So I highly recommend you come down here and visit. Here in our southern climate, sugar cane grows really well, and they had to invent a machine that they could use to extract the juices out of the sugar cane. Now, sitting on top of this rotten old tree stump here, which doesn't look like it's got much life left in it, is a real authentic sugar cane press. So what they did is they put a big piece of lumber or maybe a tree here to make an arm. They would attach it to a mule, and then the mule would walk around in a circle over and over and over again, making the gears turn. So depending on which way the mule was going and the gears were turning, you would take your sugarcane stalks and feed them in. And this thing would just crush the daylights out of it, and the juice would come out and drop into this little bin right here and then out the spout. They would then take the juice in for further processing. Back in the 1830s, some slaves that were associated with the inn here discovered this rock. This is a hieroglyph that was carved by Indians a long time ago. This brick building was originally the dairy house, and that's where they would take their milk from the cows and they would filter it, clean it up, and get it ready for use in the guest house. Later on, this building was converted to a silkery where they grew silkworms to make cloth.
Up above the dairy house was servants' quarters. Now the servants' quarters is still fairly close to the house, which is nice. That way they can get in and out easily. But inside I understand there's 2 looms in there right now. Let's check those out. This is one of the looms. And I don't know if you can see it, but this is a little spinning wheel. Up here are some naturally dyed yarns. They're not as vibrant as the synthetic colors. And over here, we have a loom that was actually original to this site. It says it's a pine loom. This is a wrapping frame. This is how you would measure, tie it off, and you wrap it up and down, up and down. And you measure how much yarn you want. And then you can put it on spools when you're done. This one is a walking spinning wheel. They called it walking spinning because you had to walk from this side to this side to keep spinning it and keep going back and forth, keep that wheel moving. For those of you who have never actually seen cotton, this is an example of cotton on a bush still, and you just pull it right off. But you really want gloves. I can't imagine how hard it was on the slaves not to have gloves back then. That must have really torn their fingers up. Down below you can see a basket full of cotton.
The 4 Travelers Rest Inns were built about 20 miles apart on the Unicoi Highway. That was about as much as you could expect to travel in those days. I know you've been chomping at the bit to go inside and see what this wonderful place is like, so come on, let's check it out. Let's talk about the construction of the inn for just a second. So the boards on the walls are at least 12 inches wide, plank, and completely knot-free. That's what they call heartwood. And the entire building is built with this stuff. There are some knots here if you look around, but the majority of the walls are knot-free. I'm down here on the floor because I want to show you these heart pine floorboards. Again, completely knot-free, but the original square nails are still in place. When I talk about square nails, this is what that means. You can see here that these nails were probably made by a blacksmith one at a time, hand hammered, but they're square. They have 4 square sides and a flat top that's been kind of crushed down. And I've heard some people say that these actually have better gripping strength than the modern round nails. Over here is an example of some of the tools that would have been used back in those days to cut wood down to the right shape and size.
Look at these rules of the tavern. 4 pence a night for a bed, 6 pence if you want supper. No more than 5 to sleep in one bed. How big are their beds? Wow. No boots to be worn in bed. Organ grinders to sleep in the wash house. No dogs allowed upstairs. No beer allowed in the kitchen. No razor grinders or tinkerers taken in. There's a whole bunch of different kind of tools in this glass case over here. Spoon molds, horn and flasks, sickles, kraut cutters, cowbells, fishing net needles, cannonballs, buckshots, all kinds of stuff.
I was scared that I missed someone and stuff. Is everything going good?
It is,
We're
yes.
just trying to fill in the room here.
Did I mess you up?
No, it's okay.
No, you're doing great.
Okay.
Then we have a bed here. Tester bed, brought to Traveler's Rest by Lizzie Lucas Jarrett, married Charles Kennedy Jarrett in 1853. So this was their bed. Looks like a double bed. It's a good sized fireplace, but it doesn't look like a kitchen fireplace. Notice it's not quite so far deep in, but it's big enough to get the room warm. Over here we have another spinning wheel. This is a cozy little room. The ceiling is a little bit lower. There's one window, a small fireplace, and a writing desk. So maybe this was where people could take time to write somebody if they wanted to. It's very antique. It's beautiful.
It's truly amazing to find a place like this that's in absolutely pristine condition such as this one is. This looks to be a dining hall. There's a table and chairs, and a couple of chairs here where you can relax by the fire and smoke a pipe or something. Everything in this room, again, is original heart pine. The ceiling, the walls, the floors. Back in here is a bedroom, and it even has a tiny little bed. All kinds of neat things like you would find back in those days. It has a blanket chest, fireplace, and some cupboards. Well, this appears to be the actual dining hall. The other must have been just a casual room. But look at this old fixture. Now, this glass here, I understand, was tinted red by adding a little bit of gold into the glass mixture while it was molten. Here's an interesting room off of the dining room. It looks like a place where dishware and glassware may have been stored. Traveler's Rest was like the comfort inn of the day, a place where you could spend the night, have a good meal, and go on your way. But it didn't have all the amenities that the modern motels have. Like, there's no shower in here. There's no TV in here. There's no telephone in here. No microwave, refrigerator, or any of that stuff. No irons, no hair dryers. You basically have a bed, a fireplace for heat, and a lantern or a candle for light. This is one of the better rooms at the inn. It's a lot larger than the others and seems to have a little bit more to offer in terms of decor and interesting things. So again, we have a fireplace, we have candles, lanterns for light, more windows, more fresh air, and definitely more space. If you were a family man, this might have been a room that you would stay in. I'd like to point this thing out. It doesn't say what it is, but upon closer inspection, we figured it out. All of the gentlemen of the day wore hats. And you might need a place to put your hat at the end of the day. And you see how that's shaped just like a gentleman's hat. That's a gentleman's hat box. This one here is an interesting box. It's a shaving chest, and it has a hidden compartment in there somewhere. Look at this beautiful hallway here. This ancient wood, it's all darkened with age. It has so much character. And I wish you could smell the aroma of the old wood. Back in here is a rabbit warren of rooms and hallways. A lot of guests would come at times. They had to put them somewhere. So come on into this room over here and I'll show you what they did with them. A lot of travelers back in those days were men traveling alone. And so oftentimes they would put several of them together in one room, and they would have to sleep in the same space. Unfortunately, this fireplace has fallen into disrepair. A lot of the bricks have fallen out due to failed mortar joints. There's so much room up here, it's amazing. Now, these two bedrooms here are separated by these walls that are literally boards that look to be about 1.25 inches thick. We're on the second floor here at the Travelers Rest Inn, but look at that, there's a stairway going up. We've got to find out what's up here. This is a really spooky attic up here. We're looking way down into the darkness. But as we come back a ways, you can see that there is a nice attic space there, although it doesn't have a floor on it. And then we come around over here on this side, and it does have a floor on it.
Last but not least, the spooky basement. Let's go. These stairs are really old. They're indented from all the footsteps. Oh, it's not a spooky basement. Come check this out. So you remember that interesting space Mike was telling you about earlier? This is it. It's not a spooky basement after all. It's a kitchen. This door goes to the outside, and it is on level ground actually, and it goes towards the milk house, which is out there. And back here we have a natural sized fireplace that would be for cooking. They did a lot of cooking in here. Pretty amazing. You could have different fires for different items, spread them all out, cook many different things. Then over here we have more tools that they used, and a juice press, yum, and a barrel. And then they have a bunch of cast iron stuff over here, and oh, there's a cast iron bathtub. Gotta come check this out. And then it looks like a root cellar back here as well. This is a sort of wash tub that they would have. Not very big, is it? I would not be thrilled with taking a bath in that. And behind it, you can see it's dark in there, but it's a good sized root cellar. You can feel the cool air coming out of it. Wow, it's a good sized root cellar. Take a look at that. All the way back over here too. It is nice and cool in here.
This is the old slave's cabin, and it was occupied by a woman who took care of the children here at the house. This is where she lived. As far as slaves' cabins go, this one is pretty generous by the standards of the day. It has interior walls, it has wood floors, it has a fireplace, and definitely more room than most of them had back in the day. So this was a really nice space. Now, it's been said that that some people were more generous towards their slaves than others, and oftentimes they would get living quarters that were almost as good as what the people in the house had. So that's a neat little tidbit of history there. So here's the fireplace. Now over here, I'd like to show you these benches. These are actually pews out of a local church that were built back in the 1800s and are still in really good condition, actually. This is the Traveler's Rest State Historic Site in Toccoa, Georgia. You should come here and spend a day just exploring the buildings, exploring the grounds, and getting to know the history of the place, because I guarantee you'll have a good time and you'll learn a lot. Thanks for watching 1834 Restoration House.